Hello, today I'm going to look at a recent game by Alexander Grischuk, played against Kamsky in the Aeroflot Rapid Chess Tournament. I think it was played in the semifinals. So Grischuk was playing with the white pieces, and uh, he went for the Slav exchange, which can be considered to be rather peaceful, but it can be full of really interesting sacrifices and tactical ideas too. Uh, So here, white develops the bishop to f4, and Kamsky tries to kind of respond to that in an aggressive manner by developing the queen to d6 and hitting the d pawn and the b pawn at the same time. And white really usually doesn't bother defending this pawn in this line. This is sort of, if he went for like with this move order with bishop to f4 ahead of knight to f3, then he kind of agrees to sacrificing the pawn. So Grischuk doesn't pay attention to the pawn. He just continues development. And here black really, either here or next move, he should have gone for this thing and should have taken the pawn and kind of try to prove that white doesn't have enough for it. Instead, Kamsky continues development, and Grischuk continues ignoring the attacked pawn. Um, and up to a point, this is all great, but here Grischuk goes knight to a4, and no longer can Kamsky take on b2, and now he has to decide what to do with the queen. The queen now is attacked; it can't take anymore on b2, and now the queen has to go away. So this move order of queen b6 on move 5, it really backfires because now the queen is misplaced, and black's kingside is still not developed. And keep in mind this was a rapid game, but that just makes it more remarkable how precisely Grischuk plays from here. So now he starts to attack on the queen side. He sees the weakness on b6. He aims for it. He wants to install the knight on b6. Of course, black can't allow this. And now it's interesting that if he goes to c5, then black's probably going to just capture it and ruin white's pawn structure. So he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want it to come to c5 and be forced to capture the pawn. He also doesn't want to go back to c3, even though it wouldn't be bad, but it's a retreat. He doesn't want to, he wants to continue attacking. So he goes instead he goes rook, instead after b5 he goes rook after c1. So continue attacking. Now if black takes, white just recaptures, and this knight is going to get lost, and white's going to be up a pawn at least. So instead Kamsky defends, but Grischuk just continues building up the pressure. He keeps this knight hanging on a4, and for the meantime, again, the same problem. If takes, then white takes, and he's gonna get that piece back. So Kamsky tries to finally castle. White just builds up the pressure, and now now he managed to put this knight to an aggressive square. It got traded off for the dark squared bishop, which is very important for black. And now white just has a very solid positional advantage because black has weaknesses on the dark squares all over the queen side, and that'll be really hard to defend, as we'll see. And immediately Grischuk begins to attack this weakened pawn chain, and there's no easy way to defend it. He just wants to capture it. He of course can't capture because that would drop the queen. He has to do something about that pawn, so he figured he would advance it. But because black has weakened dark squares, that fails. So now the bishop comes here. The rook has to, he tries to sacrifice the exchange, but actually Grischuk decides that he'd rather take the pawn. He'd rather take a pawn. Actually, to be honest, he probably could not take here. I just realized, because now the queen was defended. So instead Grischuk just takes on b4, and now again, because of that pin on the c file, black can never take. That would just drop a rook. So white won a pawn. He still has the positional advantage, and rather easily he converts it. So the rook has to retreat. Now the queen comes to the bishop goes to a good square. The queens are now exchanged, but white still has two very strong bishops, and this pawn is still quite weak. So it's not just that black is down a pawn, he has other issues. He has to struggle not to lose the second one. And Grischuk just plays very solidly. Now he captures the second pawn, and now it turns out that white gets to keep the second pawn as well, because if black captures here, then those bishops just become completely monstrous, and white wins because of the pin on the knight and on the rook. And the rest of the game is just kind of converting the advantage. White has a ton of extra material, and eventually just the c-pawn is going to promote. So up to Kamsky played up to here, and then he resigned because there's just no way out. So a very instructive game. Has somewhat, inaccurate play in the opening from black allowed Grischuk to take over initiative, and with moves like rook to c1 just completely dominate the c file, and then won the b pawn, and he won the a pawn, and just promoted his extra pawns. And he played all this in a rapid game, so it's a pretty instructive game. Thanks for watching.